Okay, here's a video for those of you that are English majors or maybe philosophy majors, history majors, sitting in a math class somewhere wondering what this has got to do with you. Want to see if we can't make some connections here between Pythagoras, Shakespeare, Buddhism, and Plato. Let's see what we can do. Okay, here's a nice postage stamp issued by Nicaragua around the year 1971, I believe. One of a series of 10 stamps about certain equations that changed the world. And you can see right here we have the Pythagorean theorem, or the equation from the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. It's on a postage stamp. Here is a quote from Shakespeare, The Merchant of Venice. Thou almost makest me waver in my faith to hold opinion with Pythagoras that the souls of animals infuse themselves into the trunks of men. So what Shakespeare is talking about here is the belief by the Pythagoreans and Pythagoras in the transmigration of the soul, that your soul can leave your body, go into the body of an animal, something like that, or maybe comes to your body from an animal. It's that idea of reincarnation, that sort of circle of birth and death, that type of thing. So Shakespeare's referring to that here when he talks about holding opinion with Pythagoras. Here's our little timeline again, just so we can see. Here is Pythagoras down here, about 540 BC. You can see Shakespeare is up here, and here's Plato a little bit after Pythagoras. Okay, let's go to Google Earth and see where Pythagoras was born. Okay, here's our starting position in the United States right here. Let's go over and see where Pythagoras was born. On the island of Samos, I believe, one of the Greek islands right here. Here you can see Greece, and here you can see the island of Samos. Now, Pythagoras was there until he was 40 years old, and then he left to do some traveling, seeking knowledge and wisdom. So one of the places that he went first was Egypt. So we'll move out here and look and see. Here's Egypt right here. Traveled all across the Middle East down this way and ended up in India. And India, when we think of India, we think of Buddhism and also that transmigration of the soul, reincarnation, things like that. Okay, here's a depiction of the Buddha right here. And what's interesting about this to me is that Pythagoras lived at this time in history and the Buddha lived at this time in history. They're contemporaries. They actually lived at the same time. And some people still debate today whether or not those two people met. And that's one of the reasons that we have this influence, that some of the same things we see in Buddhism that the Pythagoreans believed in, and in particular that transmigration of the human soul. It's also interesting to notice that Confucius lived at the same time in China. So maybe this was some type of age of enlightenment. I don't know. I don't know that much about history to know that. All right, here's where he ends his travels here in India. Let's go over to Italy, where he ends up after his travels in Crotone, or Crotone, Italy. And in Italy here is where the Pythagoreans form sort of a secret society where they study mathematics, among other things. Some of the records of that say that they're vegetarians. They believe in the transmigration of the human soul. And it turns out that that society that they had right there is one of the things that Plato based some of his philosophy on. Here's a Korean postage stamp that depicts Plato and Aristotle from a little part of that painting or that fresco, the School of Athens. This is issued by Korea in, I believe, the year 1983. Little cover of one of the publications of The Republic by Plato. So if you take a philosophy class, study philosophy as a freshman, chances are you're going to read parts of this book. The society that Plato describes in this book right here, a lot of people think is modeled after the Pythagorean society that Pythagoras formed after he got back from his travels when he was in Crotone, Italy. So we have a connection here between Pythagoras, Shakespeare, Plato, and Buddhism.